Matthew Friedman is the editor of the time loop film Palm Springs. I'm at Noble Gold Derby, here to ask you, Matthew, what was the trickiest scene for you to edit?
You know, it's funny. The trickiest scene actually had nothing to do with the time loop. The trickiest scene was actually the campfire scene, because it's, the heart of the movie. It's where the two of them really do connect and everything pivots. And in the script, it was actually a much longer scene, and it delved much deeper into sort of these philosophical discussions on how these two characters approach life. But what we found was, it's not that the scene was bad per se, but what we found was that Andy and Kristen, through their acting, had already given us all of that information about their life philosophies. We didn't need them to tell us, because we had already seen it, and it was so clear. So we had to figure out a way how to get the middle of that scene out. But the way the scene was written, it was written very smartly, but one thing led to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. So taking a chunk out of the middle was not easy. And on top of that, what they were saying was actually really interesting, and it was a cool little scene. So it was kind of hard on that level, to lose that stuff. And that was the trickiest. The time loop stuff, it was more fun than tricky. And it actually gives you latitude as an editor to take a lot of liberties that we otherwise might not get to take. So in that way, it kind of makes it easier. That's not to say we didn't pay a lot of attention to it, because we were trying to tell the story of soul-crushing repetition, not inflict soul-crushing repetition. It's a fine difference. And every time that loop reset, if we had showed literally everything again and again and again, it would have been a horrible movie. So like one example, when Sarah comes out and first confronts Niles about getting sucked into the loop, and she in the first time we see it, she walks down the side of the pool, yells at him a little bit, bends over, picks up a beer can, and starts throwing beer cans at him, and he jumps off the raft. The second time we see that, if you watch really closely, she walks down the pool, yells at him, does not pick up a single beer can, yet magically starts chucking them at him, and he flips off the raft. You never notice it when you're watching the film. But that was just one of those moments where, we didn't need to show that again, because the audience already knew, and your brain fills it in. And again, you watch it, you don't even notice that we've taken a liberty there, but we have. So our treatment of the time loop was like that all the way throughout the course of the movie. And we just paid a lot of attention to stuff like that to make sure that the movie never dragged for the audience the way it dragged for the characters living inside of it.
Yeah, I spoke with Andy Ciara before chatting with you today, and he said to make sure I asked you about the fireplace scene. So tick, we've done it. Like, what the thing that like I thought was interesting then, you talking about how that was the challenging scene, not the time loop stuff. That stuff was sort of fun. Is as an editor, is it often the sort of more tricky or challenging bits is the editing that as an audience member you don't really see or notice than the sort of flashy sort of cuts and things like that?
Well, yeah, for sure, because that's our goal, right? Like, we understand that the end result that we want to get to is to have the audience have an emotional reaction to the story. And very rarely does that emotional reaction come from consciously thinking about an edit, right? So our main overriding goal is to have that not happen and to focus on other stuff. That said, I've been doing this long enough, thankfully, that it's not really hard for me anymore per se. It's painstaking, and there's an attention to detail which at times is excruciating. And I can say literally that there is not a single frame in that movie that was not placed there with conscious intention and is not serving a specific purpose for the movie. Otherwise, I would have gotten it out. So that process is painstaking and time consuming and meticulous, and maybe even obsessive. I don't know. I'd have to ask a shrink about that. But hard, not per se. What's really hard is stuff like the campfire scene, which we talked about, and then it also came up a couple times with actors, especially like Andy and Kristen. What's really hard is because both of them come from improv backgrounds, they will just go off and improv in takes, and they'll give you so much good stuff. And that of the 10 funny things that they did that like left you in stitches in the cutting room, you can't show 9 of those things. You have to pick just one and let go of 9 that are like really funny moments. That's hard. That's really hard. But that's really the thing that's hard about my job at this point.
Yeah. Can you remember something really funny that you had to leave on the floor for the purpose of story?
Well, I mean, everywhere. And it's like little things and reactions, like when they were in the plane about to crash it, they did like 6 little bits in there that were just hysterical. And similarly, when when Sarah was coming into the bar to dance, what you see in the movie is she goes up to a guy and does this thing with his beard. But over the course of the takes that they shot for that, she did like 6 or 7 different things that were all really funny. I let go of those things. Like I don't remember the specifics. And also it's been, over a year now since I've seen them. But if I dwelled on them, it would be painful. It would be a pain that I would carry with me forever. So I try and let them go and know that they live in my heart and in the deep recesses of my failing memory, at least in that way.
What's the funniest bit you kept in?
There's so many funny bits. How do I choose? It has to be the montage, of them going through the day and dying and trying all these horrible things. And, when I first cut it, I looked at it and I said, there's no way this is all going to work. Like, there's no way. It's too unconventional. Like, the way these things work is you like start a song, you go into the montage, you do some fun stuff, and then the song ends and you're out of the montage. That montage not only has 2 songs, but it has a dance number in the middle of it that's to a 3rd song. So I put this whole thing together and I'm like, there's just no way. It just goes on and on and on and on. We're gonna have to lose something. And what we decided to do was to take the entire thing to our first friends and family screening, knowing full well that we were going to have to cut something, but we wanted to see what the audience didn't laugh at, and then that would make the decision easier. And we played it, and they laughed at everything all the way through it. And what's more, when we asked them later about parts of the movie that dragged, no one had a problem with it. So we were like, the movie has just told us that it wants to have this entire thing in it. And that's really unconventional, but the movie is telling us that it works. So we did it. And then, we still tinkered around to try and make sure it didn't get repetitive. Like, we paid a lot of attention to how their relationship progressed over the course of that montage. And in the end, we rearranged a couple of scenes to make that progression a little more pronounced, so that it didn't, go forward, backward, or make it seem like things were repeating. We also went in and did a lot of music work in order to join the songs together. So there's moments where we actually dip into score, but you don't really notice because it's score that's made to feel like the ins and outs of the songs it's connecting. And so we worked really hard to ease those transitions so it didn't feel like, okay, we've just seen a montage, now we're seeing another montage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like making it a whole and giving meaning to the whole and velocity and shape to the whole of something that otherwise might feel repetitive. Max told me later, and I don't know why he didn't tell me this at the time, but we were talking about it after the movie was done, and he said his and Andy Ciara's goal in that montage was to make the longest montage they had ever seen in any movie.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's so cool.
And they
yeah, there you go. The film's all about a time loop, right? And things like living the same day again and again. I imagine the life of an editor can sometimes feel like a bit of a time loop where you're having to go through the scene again and again and again. What scene in the film did you get the most sick of in the editing room?
Think about this. You were speaking right now to the person who has seen the movie literally the most times in the entire world. It's me. I've seen it more times than anyone else. It's funny. You don't get sick of individual scenes because, at least as I work on individual scenes, there's like little tiny moments that I've worked on and nudged and paid attention to. I told you earlier that literally every frame I pay attention to. And when I sit there and continue to look at those scenes, so they change over time, right? Like early on in the process, I might be looking at getting one small part of it to work. And then later on in the process, I might turn my attention to a different place because maybe something else in another part of the movie has changed the way that we perceive this other thing that happens. So it's not really the same scene all the way through. What can happen is when you have to sit down and watch the entire movie front to back, you start to go, ugh. That's kind of like, I know what's going to happen. Can we just get through this so I can get back to work and do something different? One of the scenes I enjoyed the most working on Sarah's, the montage of Sarah learning the quantum physics necessary to escape the loop, because it just had a fucking awesome song. I mean, that track from Genesis, right? God, I hope I'm not getting that wrong. I think it's a Genesis track that is just so cool and is so fun to just listen to that and like push picture and sound and dialogue to work in the rhythm of the song. And I was working on that late one night, and we were in this cutting room where the air conditioning didn't work, which is like literally every cutting room everywhere. So I had to cut with my door open, otherwise it would turn to like 100 degrees. So I was working on this piece and I was playing this song, really the same section of song over and over and over again. And this guy comes up to my door and who was working down the hall, and I go, oh man, he's going to ask me to shut the door and I can't do that, otherwise I'll burn up. And he goes, what is that song? I know that song. And it's like, he was loving it too, even though we were listening to the same part over and over and over again. Little things like that make your day. Oh my God, my life is pathetic.
Is there something in the film, as someone who has watched the film more than anyone else in the world has watched Palm Springs, is there a bit that you just like find funny each time that makes you laugh or crack up a bit?
Yes, and I'm trying now. I'm trying to pick out the best one, because for me, it's like the little things. like the really subtle things. One of the things I always get enjoyment about seeing is, you know, when we first meet Roy, he's walking through the wedding and he takes that appetizer from the waiter and he takes a bite of it and he goes, "Tuna?" And the guy goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Eh." And he walks on. And then later in the movie, when Niles goes to his house, he interrupts Roy in the kitchen making, do you remember? Tuna.
Yeah.
Roy is a tuna aficionado. And that's why he reacts that way when he tastes the mediocre tuna at the wedding. I love it like that. The other one that just that always cracks me up is this moment that Roy and Niles have at the bar when they first meet. They have this like sort of standoff, and then there's this really long pregnant pause, and Niles goes, "I like your hat." To which Roy responds without missing a beat, "Of course you do." I don't know why. That just literally every time I say that. But for me, it's like small stuff like that.
And I think the more you watch a film or a television show, the more you do appreciate the smaller moments, the things that you only notice maybe the third or fourth or fifth or 10th, or maybe in your case, 100th or time. Like, yeah.
It's one of the things I loved about the script when I first read it. And it really is, to Max and Andy Ciara's credit, that they have layered so much stuff through this movie. And there is so much backstory and things connect in so many different ways, but the film doesn't dwell on those things. They're there and you can see them if you watch again and again and again and again. Everything makes sense. Well, almost everything makes sense. But they're all there for a reason, and they're all there to be discovered, and they're not leaned into. Because Max and Andy knew that the audience who was going to be drawn to this film was going to be a smart audience. And they weren't going to need, you know, like Niles says, his response to Sarah asking how long he's been in this loop is, "I don't remember." Right? And it's never explained how long he's been in there. And normally a movie would do that. But this one doesn't. You know, and so then when you go and watch it the next time, you can sort of start seeing all these the truth in that moment to her, or whether he was just avoiding something he didn't want to talk about, or whether he was lying to her. You know, it's like the clues are all layered in there. And are they crucial plot points that we lean on and focus on? No. But they're there in the background, just sort of waiting to be discovered, just like the thing, you know, with Roy and the tuna. There's so much there, and Andy and Max really did an amazing job crafting that.
You spoke about how each shot was very intentional, or each frame, that we could pick out any frame and you'd be able to tell us why it's in the movie. What frame are you the most proud of, or are you the most pleased with in the film?
Oh God, all of them.
All of them.
I mean, they're all my kids. How can I pick one?
What frame encapsulates the film the best?
Q, again, there's so many answers to that, because Q, the DP, just did such a smashing job capturing that location visually. There are some visual and sonic elements in the explosion at the end that I personally find very aesthetically pleasing. As they blow themselves up, we spent a lot of time choosing the images that you see in that really cool montage, and some of them are running forward and some of them are running back, and you'll hear snatches of sound that are these sort of milestones of the journey that the two of them have gone on over the course of the film. And in that, that brief, I don't know what it is, maybe even just like 3 seconds of film, there's just a lot of images and a lot of sounds, and it's coming on the heels of this fucking completely kick-ass Kate Bush song. That area, just on an aesthetic level, I find really fulfilling to me.
Yeah, I spoke with Q yesterday, and she said the shot for her that summed up the film was Andy on the pizza in the pool. That was her one. So sort of both, like, her one's very like sets up the film. Your one, sort of, your frame closes it out, like, which is nice, coming full circle.
It's certainly an iconic shot that they captured.
Yeah. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for talking to us today about Palm Springs.
Sure.
All the best of luck for upcoming awards, and people watching this video can go to goldderby.com to make your own award predictions and join the discussion about Palm Springs and other films. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, there you go, Matt and Matt.